Skeptic Zone, a miracle of technology. A universe of reason, the Skeptic Zone.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, show number 44 for the 21st of August 2009. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. On today's show, our reporter Kylie Sturgis talks to Slough from Sessions with Slough, the podcast, and the music producer, friend of George Trabb. Following that, we have another think tank. This time, it's Dr. Rachie, Diane Verstappen, and Joanne Benamou. Yes, an all-female think tank once again. Now, those of you in the States coming to DragonCon in a couple of weeks, please come and find us. We'll be at the Skeptic Track, and I'll be at the Silk Road Track doing origami. There'll be Kylie Sturgis, Dr. Rachie, and myself, plus our friends Dr. Steve Roberts, the Australian Skeptics UFO expert, and Dr. Martin Bridgestock from Queensland. We'll all be there. Please come and find us out and say hello, and I hope you'll enjoy some of the panels and talks we'll be giving. But for now, let's get on to this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone.
I'm Kylie Sturgis, and today I'm talking to Slavko Halitin, known to his many fans as Slough. He works as a music producer and an award-winning recording artist. His podcast, Sessions with Slough, takes listeners behind the scenes at B Sharp, a recording studio in New York City. His experience with sessions, gear reviews and equipment shootouts make him an expert choice to discuss how to deal practically and pragmatically with superstitions and pseudoscience in the audio industry. Okay, I'm familiar with your work because I listen to a great podcast called Sessions with Slough, and I am not one who is particularly familiar with audio technology, but I enjoy listening to someone who's enthusiastic about their profession, and you're certainly that. Recently, you discussed the superstition multitrack on your podcast, and I immediately thought to myself, are there commonly held superstitions in the audio industry, and how do you deal with them when you come across them?
Well, I would say that in the music industry, or at least the part of the industry that I'm involved with mostly, which is recording, I would say generally there aren't too many superstitions that are apparent or obvious. I mean, like in something like baseball, for example, you might have people who have a superstition about a winning streak or something like that, you know, and like the pitcher won't change his underwear for 3 months or something disgusting like that.
Oh, dear God, yeah.
In the audio industry or in the recording industry, I think if anything, people might have their own little thing that they like to do to sort of get themselves focused. You know, it is an environment where you have to deliver something creatively, and sort of whatever relaxes you, I think it can be a good thing. You know, people might bring something like I don't know, their favorite little, you know, quote unquote lucky charm or something like that, something that gives them a sense of comfort, something from their home, or something of a loved one's you know, keychain or something. I don't know, whatever it is. I haven't had an instance where it's gotten in the way of anything. Sometimes, you know, I happen to have quite a lot of religious clients, a lot of like Baptists for some reason. And the one thing I have to say that sort of makes me a little bit uncomfortable from time to time, it's not a big deal, but they really like to pray a lot. And it's like right before, it started out with some people at the beginning of a session. They would sort of, you know, as a group, they would pray, and that's fine. I just sit there at the console. I wouldn't say anything. And they would do their thing. But then it got to the point where people were sort of, you know, praying before each take in a recording session. And that just really, to me, upsets the flow of things. But
time is money as well.
It is, and I mean it's up to them if that's what makes, if that's what gets them motivated. Well, that's fine. Who am I to say that they shouldn't be doing it? The one time, well, it was actually it happened a couple of times now. But the first time it happened, it really took me by surprise. One of my clients, who's a brilliant pianist, like, a Grammy-winning kind of artist. He's a Christian, and he had a band in, and they sort of invited me to pray with them in the live room, standing in a circle, holding hands, and I'm the kind of person, I'm so non-confrontational. I said, sure, I went in there, held the hands, and stuff, and they just went into this real kind of like a Baptist kind of praise the Lord, praise Him, thank you, Lord, for putting us in touch with Slough and this and that, and I'm just standing there smiling and not participating in the sense of I'm not praying, but hey, if you see, the thing is, if I were to say to them, no, go ahead, I pass. I don't know if that would make them feel particularly uncomfortable. And I feel less discomfort, I believe, just standing there and smiling, than they would if I refused. So,
It's a case of what's the harm? In this case, you're sort of helping them out, I guess.
To me, that's, yeah, that's how it feels to me. So, but as far as just general kind of superstition, I've been lucky to not encounter it. Whatever makes the person feel comfortable, I think is okay. If somebody came in and wanted to do something that I objected to, well, then I don't know. I'd have to deal with that. As I encountered it, but so far, knock on wood, lucky.
Oh, that's a good one to use, definitely, being a superstition in itself.
Right.
Now, in these cases, we can say, okay, it's routine, it gets people into a comfort zone. What happens when it's something that is dangerous, when people start promoting pseudoscience that will actually rip them off? Have you come across many audio-based pseudoscience which people have been touting, saying this will improve things beyond compare, and it just really won't, for their pocket at least, if not maybe their career, I don't know.
The thing that I've encountered so far in terms of stuff like that, I think that people are easily influenced by just brand names and the way things look as opposed to the way they sound and the way they work. There was a case where I had a bass player who came in and would not use anything but Monster cable. And he swore that the transient response was much better and stuff like that. And the thing is, I know that he paid like an enormous amount of money for cables and stuff, and to me, it was just something that I didn't believe in any way made any difference. So it's something that I've encountered to a degree, but I think more so people are just mesmerized by brand names and the promise of something rather than the performance. They say, well, this microphone will make you sound, like so-and-so. It's a vintage styled microphone with vacuum tube, electronics and that kind of stuff. And that's all fine and good, but really I think it's just, it's the image, it's the sexiness of what is being sold. It's a business. I mean, it's retail.
It happens everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Is it very difficult to distinguish hype from a good product?
Well, is it difficult? I think that it can be. Unfortunately, in the audio industry, much of what is sold by ad copy, and you really. There's not much that you can determine when you walk into a pro audio shop. Is this microphone good? Well, sure, we could plug it in, you could hear it. Well, that's not really going to be a great test of something that, will have subtle differences between one product and another. And, well, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not sure. The only way to tell is to really purchase the product and then try it in your own studio, in your own home, whatever it is, on location, whatever kind of work you do. As far as the sort of consumer market, stereo systems and stuff, I think what sells a lot of people are the specifications of something, and they say, well, this thing goes down to 20 hertz and has a this amplifier has a frequency range of up to 50 kilohertz or something like that, which is just beyond anything that we can really detect. And some people, I think, just buy on specs alone. And I suppose that's okay. Really, sometimes I think that people just spend money unnecessarily, and they're just sold in a store by image. Again, there's an excellent podcast I wanted to mention. I don't know if you're familiar with Quick Hits. Yeah, it's a guy named Dave Hitt has a podcast. He had a blog called The Hitman Chronicles, and in this podcast he has an episode where he speaks about being he used to work in an audio retail kind of a place that sells stereo systems and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And the workers there were, of course, very familiar with the equipment, the speaker enclosures that they would sell, the amplifiers, the stereo systems in general, the turntables and everything. And so they would, sometimes when it was slow, they would just kind of do kind of their own little blind tests, of equipment. And they got to the point where they could tell speakers apart and stuff like that, because with speakers, that's something that's pretty apparent, especially if you get used to hearing a particular pair of speakers and stuff. But they when they sold equipment, they would throw in speaker wire. And this stuff was like, a penny a foot. It was really nothing. I mean, they didn't charge the customer. They would just say, hey, how many feet of speaker cable do you need? And it was kind of a way to close the deal even, It's like if a person was standing there wondering, they said, so how many feet of speaker cable do you need? And that would sort of push them over the edge. They would say, 12 feet, and boom, the sale is done. And at a certain point, they started getting Monster cable in. This was in the late 70s. Now, the Monster cable they sold at like $40 a foot.
Wow.
Or $40 a cable or whatever it was. But the point is that this stuff was way more expensive, and they actually had to charge the client. And some people, came in specifically asking for Monster cable and stuff. And these employees just didn't feel that that there really was a difference between the two cables. So they set up a blind test that they did themselves, and like all the people in the store, the employees participated, and they absolutely could not tell the difference between one cable and another. There was just simply no difference. And yet, if a person wants to spend that kind of money on a cable, well, fine. I guess there's nothing wrong with it. However, these were salespeople. They're in it to make money, to make a commission. And, Dave, when he was recounting this in his podcast, said, for him, if somebody specifically asked for it, he would sell it to them. But otherwise, he didn't push it because he just didn't feel that it was right to do so. It's like this cheap 1 penny a foot cable is just as good. It's
certainly something that skeptics are interested in. We had James Randi back in 2007 who had to test the, $7,250 12-foot Anju audio cables, which were sold by a company.
Pear.
Oh, you're starting to groan already.
Yeah.
Have you ever had the opportunity to do a similar test, or would you suggest people test such a thing?
I've never had the opportunity to use pair cable. I've certainly heard of places that had cable even more expensive. There are some studios, that just have solid gold cable. It's just, The thing is, it's common to go into a little electronics shop and see, or into a pro audio retailer and see things that are like, gold-plated contacts, and gold is a great conductor of electricity and stuff, and yeah, okay, I'll buy that the gold contacts don't corrode, they don't break down like some other cheap metals. But, as a conductor, copper is also great. As long as it's sort of oxygen-free, it'll last a lifetime. And so I just simply don't buy this claim, and I've certainly heard of that challenge, and it's just no surprise that it just never went through. It never got past the preliminaries. And there are ways to, of course, test even from a perspective of I'll tell you what, in a controlled experiment where you're doing a spectrographic sort of analysis of how one cable works as opposed to another, there might be a slight difference in the response. I mean, you could take two of the same kind of cable and you might get a slightly different response, but really it's non-detectable. It's insignificant differences. And ultimately, the person on the street, to them, it would never make a difference. It would just absolutely would never make a difference. People tend not to hear the difference between MP3 and CD audio. I mean, low resolution MP3s, stuff that's been compressed quite a bit, people start to hear the artifacts. But when you're getting up to 320 kbps sort of compression, where you're decreasing the file size by a factor of say a quarter of the original size or so, most people just absolutely cannot tell the difference. I can barely tell the difference sometimes depending on the program material. But so is it ever worth it for someone to pay $7,000 for a cable? Absolutely not, in my opinion. But you know what? If you have the money and you want the bragging rights, well, that's what it costs.
Mm.
Yeah. There was another thing that came to mind, speaking of audio CDs. I mean, this is an example of just absolute quackery. There were people that absolutely swore that if you took an audio CD and put it in a Ziploc bag and put it in the freezer overnight,
Really?
that the next day you take it out, let it sit, just to get to room temperature, and they swore it would absolutely sound better. Now, these are ones and zeros. This is digital, and people swore that it made a difference. There were another group of people who swore that if you took this particular green marker, and it was a particular brand and a particular shade of green, and if you marked the edge of the CD, that would influence the sound. Baloney! I mean, it's just...
Oh, wow.
I'm trying to keep it clean, Kylie, because it's just outrageous. And how do you prove something like this? I mean, it's so subjective. Somebody might sit there and listen and say, well, that sounds better. And you know what? If you had one CD that you didn't do that with and a CD that you did it with, you have a 50-50 chance of getting it right. It's not a good test. And there's no way that somebody could pick out a CD that's been frozen. There's just absolutely no way. And in the audio industry, there are just so few people. I haven't even come across an instance where an audio professional really where they put their reputation on the line and said that I can tell this over this other thing. Because nobody can. It's not like the difference between, it's not like telling the difference between something that's absolute crap and something that's quite good. We're talking often, you're talking about differences that are just imperceivable and thus insignificant, and they don't make a difference. You find so little of that. But you'll find tons of people who are willing to tout the benefits of this particular gear over that, and how wonderful this sounds, and how warm this particular microphone sounds as opposed to something else. And there are buzzwords like that, something that sounds warm and punchy. Well, people have yet to define those words.
Are there good publications or sites or even professionals within the industry who are considered trustworthy in terms of consumer affairs?
Yeah. As far as consumer audio, there is Consumer Reports magazine, of course, that they really go through enormous pains to do controlled experiments, and they built an anechoic chamber, which is a huge room that has no echo in it whatsoever. It's absolutely lined top to bottom with fiberglass. Even the floor is actually a metal grid beneath which there's fiberglass. So when you walk into this thing, it is the most unusual experience because you have no sense of space. You have no sense of whether you're in a tiny room or a gigantic auditorium, because there's nothing to give you that audible feedback. And actually, when you're walking into an anechoic chamber, you almost feel like you're going into sort of a submarine or something, because suddenly it feels like the pressure is different, although it's absolutely the same. It hasn't changed a bit. It's just an illusion because of your ears. Anyway, so they go through an enormous pains to build, places like this and set up tests to give a real-world comparison between, say, stereo speakers or amplifiers and stuff. They don't have any advertising, and so that's what makes it, it's purely subscription-based, so that's what makes it trustworthy. In the pro audio world, there used to be a publication that had no ads, and I used to read their reviews all the time, but unfortunately now they have ads, and suddenly it's just every review is like, well, this is a great product, it's just
it's a little bit like fashion magazines where, oh yes, this lipstick is wonderful, and then suddenly there's a full page ad for it on the other page, and you go,
absolutely. So there's, unfortunately, there is no publication that I know of that is purely objective and doesn't accept advertising. There are plenty of online forums, but that's just like the worst place in the world to research. Yeah, I mean, it's just because everybody in these forums, especially in the pro audio world, everybody just really likes to brag about what they particularly own, or they'll only regard a particular brand, as being worth anything, and everything else is crap, and everything's made in China, and I can't stand to listen to this particular product or whatever it is, and it's just fairly useless. It is difficult if you're getting into that.
The signal to noise is a bit,
Yes, exactly.
I have one more question, which, are CDs really good at replacing LPs after all?
Well, when CDs first came out, the technology that was used to create those CDs wasn't a mature technology, and everybody complained, well, some people, of course, purists, naturally, complained that it just didn't sound anywhere near as good as LPs or as good as a 30-inch per second half-inch tape, and the problem was that the analog to digital converters at that time weren't very good. And since then, well, you see, CDs the format of a CD is a 16-bit word length and a sampling rate of 44,000 kilohertz. Now, what that just simply means is that there's a particular dynamic range to them, and there's a certain frequency response that it can detect, and it's well within the range of human hearing. But since the days when CDs first came out, the technology has advanced to the point where today, when people are recording stuff, it's done in 24-bit, which has a much wider dynamic range. So the signal is cleaner. It's a longer word length. Things are just, even the sampling rates have gone up, even though it's beyond human hearing. The things have progressed to the point where it really sounds much better than when CDs were first introduced. I would say, in my opinion, a well-recorded, program will sound absolutely wonderful as compared with an LP record or half-inch tape. Is it better? I don't know. To me, it's sort of different. I have not heard the new SACD, the Super Audio CD format. It's a completely different format than the what they call the PCM, pulse code modulation format, which has been used thus far in the digital world. They use direct stream digital, the Sony format for SACD. It's DSD. Supposedly people claim that it's the first format to really sound as good as analog tape and vinyl. I personally haven't heard it compared with anything else. When you don't have a reference point, I don't know. Like I said, even a great sounding MP3 sounds pretty good to the average person. But I think the key is to be able to compare one to the other, and I haven't had a chance to do that yet. But all of this is to say that in my world, I strive to get the best possible sound, and I go through great pains to try and accomplish that. And what happens in the end? People rip it to MP3.
Oh, no.
So, it you know what? But I think it's great that a person can rip a CD and put it on their iPod. I mean, I think that's great for the music industry in general. As far as fidelity, well, it's unfortunate, but you know what? That doesn't mean that I'm going to give up and not do the best that I can do, because this is my craft. I take pride in it. So, as well as thousands of other people around the world, they do the same thing, and they strive to make it the best that they can be, and I'll continue to do that.
And if people wish to hear more about audio technology and your efforts to continue to...
My quest for perfect audio!
We can hear it on your podcast, can't we?
The website is sessionswithslau.com, and that's SLAU. And, it's... I try to keep it sort of general sometimes, and I know that I sometimes get quite geeky, but, if it gets too geeky for anyone, they could always just delete it. That's the beauty of podcasting, isn't it?
Yeah, or they can write in and say, what exactly did you mean here, or...
Yes, absolutely. They could always drop me a line at sessionswithslau@gmail.com. That's an easy one to remember, I suppose. And I'm always happy to answer questions and in any way that I can. I enjoy it. I take a lot of pleasure in just answering the questions and giving my experience, my perspective, and I'm not afraid to say I don't know because sometimes
always learning. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Kylie. It's been an absolute pleasure.
The song used in this segment is I'm the One from the album The Weight of Words. In addition to his podcast, Sessions with Slough, he'll be appearing on podcasting panels at DragonCon in Atlanta next month. You can check out the podcasting track at www.dragon-pod.com.
And now a message from the inside of Richard Saunders' walk-in refrigerator.
thank you to everybody who came up to see me at the amazing meeting, and thank you for those who bought my origami earrings. I've set up a little store at skepticzone.etsy.com. It all goes to helping the Skeptic Zone podcast.
You're listening to The Skeptic Zone. I'm Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
Hello listeners, and welcome to the Think Tank once again. We're at our favourite club, and before we start our little chit-chat today about things that we've heard in the last week, we want to say cheers to the health of a listener by the name of Stephen Montgomery from Utah, who sent us some money for drinks.
Cheers.
So cheers to your health,
Cheers.
Stephen. Thank you. Cheers. And I'd like to welcome our special guest today. We have Joanne Benamu. Hi, Jo.
Hi, Rachel.
How are you today?
I'm a little bit hoarse and coffee, but I'm soldiering on.
You've had a few colds and flus recently, haven't you?
I have, but despite all of this, I am continuing with my medical treatments
Oh, well,
as
that's
advised
good.
by my doctor.
By your doctor. Good,
Yes.
Jo, good to see. Well, thanks for coming all the way from the other side of the bridge to be with us tonight. And I'd also like to say hello to Diane Verstappen. Hello, Diane.
How are you, Rachel?
Good, how are you?
Busy.
Busy? Busy with work?
Busy with work, flying, lots of places.
Lots of stuff to do at the moment?
Yes.
Well, we've all got stuff on at the moment, I think, haven't we? It's been a very busy couple of months for most of us. We've obviously had the vaccination campaign that we've been dealing with. Australian Skeptics and Dick Smith has been dealing with some media fallout as a result of that. Well, not so much fallout, but interest, rather. And there will be a couple of news stories coming up in the next few days, in fact, on Australian television. So as soon as they go to air, we'll stick them up on YouTube so our international listeners can see what's continuing to be investigated by the Australian media, which is a good thing to see. Responsible scientific journalism is not something we see that much in this country, or across the world for that matter.
Any particular channels or any particular programs?
Yes, there will be a report on the Australian Broadcasting Corporation in the next few days, possibly next week. So I can't say too much, but that will be coming up, so keep an eye out for that. And of course there was a news story in the Sydney Morning Herald that appeared on Saturday morning in Sydney, which was talking about the complaint that was issued by Ken McLeod, who is a friend of ours, and also a response from Meryl Dorey. And our president, Iran Segev, did an interview for a local radio station, in fact, a couple of days ago, where Meryl was interviewed and then Iran was interviewed. And they did a bit of a hack job on that interview, Jo. Did you hear that?
I did hear it. It was, I thought it was actually quite badly, didn't translate very well.
Yeah, well,
it wasn't a very
we were
together.
lucky to be able to hear Iran's recording, which he made when he was being interviewed, and then we heard what happened when the editor or the journalist got and edited it all together. And yeah, most of the important points that he made were actually didn't seem to appear in the final edit, did they?
No, it was very strangely edited and didn't really translate very well into, I think.
Just to let our international and interstate listeners know, the radio station is 2SER, and it's an independent sort of local radio station funded by donations and so
with uni students and
volunteers. Yeah. In fact, one of our friends, Ian Wolfe, does a very good show called Diffusion Radio, which is a science-based program. But you don't always know what you're going to get with those kind of places. So, anyway, it would be interesting for people to hear that. All right, let's kick off with some news items, shall we?
Yes.
Now, Jo, you and I heard about something today, which is to do with weight loss products in Australia, didn't we?
Yeah, I know. I haven't actually read any of the newspaper articles that have been reporting on this, but I did see one of the news reports tonight, and it seems like the weight loss industry has decided to finally crack down on some of these shonky products that are promoted within the industry. In fact, the large number of shonky products that are promoted in the industry. So I'm not quite sure where they're intending on going with it, but it seems to have finally come to their attention that a lot of the things that are being promoted as, particularly they were talking about fad diets and things like that, which, you know, I don't think it's particularly news to a lot of people that these things don't really work, but they seem to have suddenly decided that they need to crack down on things. So.
Well, this was actually a federal government task force, which is called the Preventative Health Task Force, and they've called for the weight loss industry to be regulated in a report that's going to be handed down, was handed down last month. And the reason that they're doing this is because of course, there's an obesity epidemic in this country like there is in many other parts of the Western world. And they see this as a contributing factor
that's right.
In the sense that people go on these fad diets that might last for a few months and they lose weight because they're not eating, essentially. And then once they go off the diet, more often than not, statistics show that they put on the weight they lost and sometimes even more. Yeah. And so this is just contributing to the obesity crisis, and which then reflects on the healthcare budget, etc. So the government's decided they're going to crack down on these things. But a lot of these products are sold in pharmacies.
Yes,
aren't they?
Aren't they? and in fact, not only are they sold in pharmacies, a lot of pharmacies have gotten onto the bandwagon of, you know, making their own products and promoting them as that particular pharmacy's product. And once again, it sort of draws one back to the issue of where pharmacies lie in their responsibility for using evidence-based treatments and interventions and products and so on. So,
well, I think I may have mentioned this on the think tank before, but there's a consumer watchdog body in Australia called Choice, and they tend to examine consumer products for efficacy and for they do a whole and quality. So they do a whole gamut of things, from washing machines and, you know, toasters to things like diets that you can buy in pharmacies. And they did a study late last year showing that most of these things that you buy in a pharmacy don't have any long-term benefits. And I think they cited, they may have, and if they didn't, they should have, the lemon detox diet, which of course is useless.
How's it supposed to work?
Detox diets generally.
Well, in fact, there was a blog written about this on The Punch yesterday. It's a special kind of powder that has some sort of peppery stuff in it, sort of like capsicum powder or paprika powder, and then a lemon sort of sachet, and you just make up this drink. And so you're basically drinking peppery, lemony water. So you lose weight because you're not eating.
Getting any calories.
Well, that's right, yeah. But it's also supposed to be detox.
Nice.
And of course, listeners would know that, I hope so by now, that detox diets have no basis in medicine or science. It's just a fad, and, you know, it's all made up. So, but the lemon detox diet is particularly well known. And in fact, there's a shop just down the road from my work that I walk past every day. It's a health food shop, and their front window at the moment is this beautiful window display of lemons and this nice... The packaging is really attractive. In fact, it's this nice white box with this lady sort of jumping in the air like, oh, I've detoxed, I'm feeling so much better. And this pile of lemons in the window. But yeah, Choice showed through their studies that these things don't have any benefit. But one of the things they did point out in their report was the diets that you just mentioned that some pharmacies set up. They have these consultants in the pharmacy who you can go and see, and they apparently design a diet specially for you, tailored to your weight and your blood type and that sort of stuff.
Are they nutritionists?
I don't know if they are. In some cases, they're just pharmacy employees who've done a 3-hour training course.
Okay.
Some have done a little bit more training than that. Some of them are homeopaths. Not the ones linked to the pharmacy diet specifically, but there are some that are called nutritionists or homeopaths who just sell some sort of...
But they're definitely not dietitians.
Not as far as I'm aware. There may be some dietitians, but generally no. Okay. Generally no. That's not the common person to do this sort of stuff. So that was one of the things that Choice was complaining about, was that these people have had 3 hours of training in some cases, as little as, and so they're not qualified to be giving advice about diet and nutrition.
And I guess that actually, it's interesting because that raises a point that we were talking about earlier, where someone had asked me yesterday whether the term nutritionist is can be applied to anyone, whether anyone can call themselves a nutritionist. And I had a look at the website of one of the nutritionist bodies. I can't remember their exact name, in Australia, and they recognise that indeed the term nutritionist has never been regulated. Anyone can call themselves a nutritionist.
Yeah.
And so they've recognised that there is a real problem with people out there calling themselves nutritionists who are not qualified to be giving people advice about nutrition, saying God knows what, and that there is a real need to crack down on that as well.
What about the title dietitian?
No, I think dietitian's different. I think
they are
Rachel knows
registered.
about that,
Yeah, they are registered. They have a body.
Same as physiotherapists and dentists.
And I think the thing is that in the application, a dietitian is someone who has a clinical role. A nutritionist has a different role, that they'd be seen more in industry and so on, whereas a dietitian you would see more, for example, in a hospital making clinical decisions about
So did the body or the regulatory body for the dietitians, did they make any comment on this? Because they would be crying foul about this. So.
Oh, no, they back it.
Okay.
You mean this decision by the government to regulate this? No, in fact, in front of me I've got an article from news.com.au, and I quote, "The Dietitians Association of Australia is backing the recommendation."
Oh, good.
And that's, it's a good thing for them, because it protects their members and makes sure that, their training is going to apply, instead of someone who's hanging up a little thing on their door saying, "I'm a nutritionist, I can give you advice," So, according to one expert here, the only way to lose weight is to stop eating so much and do more exercise, guys.
What you put in, take it out.
Sorry about that.
Damn.
So it's all about hard work.
Yeah, it is, apparently. So, sorry, no quick fix with diets. So have you got something else to talk about there, Joe?
Back on the homeopathy bandwagon again. Well, the anti-homeopathy bandwagon,
Actually, Samuel Hanneman's not with us tonight.
I
is he?
know.
Shame.
I was hoping to make an appearance, but...
We can channel him.
Channel him, yeah.
Ooh.
Do you know, you're drinking water, Diane,
Yeah,
so perhaps...
I know. That's too much alcohol.
Spirit of Samuel Hanneman, alive and well.
You have to shake it up.
So the reason I've been interested in homeopathy this week is I've been coming across a lot of things about homeopathy in India. And the reason that interested me is because I know that in India, and I don't know about what other countries, but I know that in a lot of countries in Europe, homeopathy is very much accepted as part of mainstream medicine. And when you read news reports from India about medicine, you hear homeopaths referred to as part of the mainstream medical body, and it's quite a strange experience to read these articles. And the reason it's been particularly in the media a lot in the last few weeks is because of swine flu. And the Indian government is, well, specifically the particular article I looked at was about in an area of India, I can't remember exactly where it was, but the government was funding research into a homeopathic treatment for the H1N1 virus. And I just found this such a bizarre thing to read, that this is not just that some random homeopathic organisation is doing this. This is government funded.
Is it local government or is it like federal?
It's sort of, I think it was sort of almost the equivalent of state. I can't remember exactly which area of India.
So it was a province of some provincial government or something.
That's right. And in fact, actually, I can tell you exactly because I've got the article here.
This is quite relevant too for the case here of the baby girl
Sam.
Yeah,
family.
The Sam family case.
Yeah.
Because our listeners who don't remember, Gloria Sam was 9 months old when she died of malnutrition and infections because she had severe eczema, and her parents had treated her with homeopathy, despite the fact that her father was a registered homeopath, but also a registered medical doctor. Yeah, and that trial has been going on. They were charged with manslaughter. And recently there was another finding in that case.
They think they were talking about the sentencing in the last couple of weeks, and I think that his barrister had said recently that the I can't remember the father's name, but that
Thomas Sam. Thomas Sam.
That he had demonstrated that he had learnt from what had happened to his daughter, because his other child, who is I think now 3 years old, had, according to the barrister, developed similar illnesses, and that initially I think it had been treated homeopathically, but that now it was being treated with conventional medicine along with homeopathy and other treatments, and I just had to sort of walk away from it.
I remember reading that too, and the barrister was clutching at straws that were so small that you could hardly even imagine they existed. I remember one of his statements was to do with the fact that he said Thomas Sam made a mistake because of his faith and respect for homeopathy, but he was a qualified doctor, a qualified medical doctor. So they are scampering in the dirt to find something here.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I digress.
No, not at all. But it's quite fascinating where sort of how this is being played out in India. The particular it was the Maharashtra government in an area called Pune or Pune. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but so they were looking at they wanting to be the first to find an effective alternative medical treatment for the H1N1 virus. And what's really interesting is I've seen these particular substances mentioned in a couple of articles, but there are a few articles where they talk about finding a treatment for H1N1 using homeopathic treatments, and they all refer to different substances as having, being the ones that will save the day, will be the correct substance. So they talked about two of them. One was called ferrum phosphate, which they say increases hemoglobin and therefore increases the resistance to disease. And the other one is called calimure, which strengthens cells and enhances their ability to fight viruses. And I went and I had a look at, what each of these substances were. And this was all recommended by a senior homeopath called Dr. Oak. And ferrous phosphate, or as they call ferrum phosphate, or it had a very sort of homeopathic sounding name, is an inorganic compound which is used in garden chemicals, but it's also added to food supplements as a way of adding iron to the diet. So, I mean, they're of course they're legitimate, substances used in health care and so on. The other one, and this is what I found rather interesting, this calimure is potassium chloride. Which,
what?
Yeah. It's also called calimure, which is an interesting homeopathic name for
potassium
chloride. And the thing about potassium chloride is that it's essential in our bodies, and it's used in medical treatments for treating low potassium and to replenish electrolytes when you have diarrhea and so on. But in very high doses, it can actually cause cardiac arrest.
Yeah, because of the potassium.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in homeopathic dilutions, you see it in, the C6 or C30 dilutions, crazy homeopathic dilutions. But what I found really, really strange was that one of the herbal cold and flu tablets contains 35 milligrams of potassium chloride and 20 milligrams of ferrous phosphate. Well, what I was trying to work out was, and so homeopathic remedies are sold you find homeopathic remedies sold alongside herbal remedies.
Yes.
Okay, they all sort of feed off each other. So if this particular cold and flu tablet is claiming that this high dose of potassium chloride and this high dose of ferrous phosphate is going to be able to be used for cold and flu tablets, and yet the homeopaths are saying that there are exceptional dilutions of these substances which they say have the opposite effect. How does that in any way make any sense. Shouldn't, if the one's using it to fight cold and flu, but the other one's using a homeopathic dilution?
By this stage, you should know that homeopathy doesn't make any sense.
But
you're missing the point.
I took it to a bit of an extreme, but it was just that I just looked at this and I thought, this is just, you can't, they talk about some of these substances which have this opposite effect, but they're talking about the same substance not having it just makes your brain explode.
But it's because it's made up shit. That's why it's made up shit.
As Steve Novella said in I think the latest episode of Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, and he's now created my favourite logical fallacy ever. It's the I've just gone blank. It's the making up bullshit and pulling it out of your ass fallacy. and I just think, this kind of stuff is nuts.
If you try to draw logical conclusions from the stuff you read about homeopathy, you just end up in a screaming heap.
There's no logical conclusion to be drawn, but when you see how illogical it is, and trying to get people who are buying into it to recognise that there is no scientific basis to it. It's that kind of thing that we hope that people will actually see
think about
understand.
And consider. Yeah.
So anyway, I got off on a bit of a tangent on that one.
More crazy stuff from the homeopaths.
But actually, just there was one other little thing in line with that, which I thought you would find a little bit amusing, which was that there was a bit of an SMS crisis related to homeopathy and swine flu, which was
SMS crisis.
An SMS crisis. Homeopathic medicine SMS spreads misinformation. There was an SMS apparently got sent around randomly. This again was in India, telling people to take a particular homeopathic remedy 3 times a day for 5 days as prevention for swine flu. And apparently this created some sort of public panic because people were getting this random SMS.
Oh my gosh.
It was a very strange little something that happened. Anyway.
Can they explain what happened? It was just a viral SMS, was it?
Yeah, it's
like a chain letter or something.
It was like a viral SMS that went around telling people to take a particular homeopathic preparation to prevent H1N1.
Right. Insane. Well, we might just finish off by talking about something completely different. Ghosties and UFOs. Woo-hoo. Have you guys heard about the sightings in the last week of UFOs in Darwin, which is in the north of Australia?
I haven't actually.
Neither have I.
You haven't?
Enlighten us.
Well, there have been reports of UFOs in the Northern Territory quite a lot in the last 12 months. And just this week, a gentleman from the Northern Territory by the name of Alan Ferguson produced a video or released a video that he said was of UFO activity. And he's now claiming that tourists will be flocking to Darwin from around the world because he believes that alien activity in the skies could rival the wonders of the natural world in the Northern Territory. For example, like Uluru, which is Ayers Rock, Kakadu Gorge or Kakadu National Park, and the Catherine Gorge, which are considered one of the most spectacular parts of Australia. Yeah, he thinks people won't worry about that anymore. They'll go up to see the UFOs. Yeah.
I see.
So he says that after seeing all these sightings for years, I've said to myself, we're crazy for not promoting it to the rest of the world as a UFO hotspot.
Wow.
Yeah, so they also, the 7 network, Channel 7, spoke to a ufologist who said there was a history of unexplained sightings in the Northern Territory. And he thinks that in the last 18 months there's been unusually high activity.
I'm wondering whether this might be because there are a whole lot of dehydrated lunatics walking around in the Northern Territory.
Well, I don't know if
We don't mean to offend any listeners that live there or anything.
No,
we're not talking about our listeners.
I'm thinking more, British backpackers.
British backpackers,
I think that's far more likely.
And Germans, in fact.
Yes.
Hello to our German friends. If you come to the Northern Territory, don't walk around thinking you'll find a town, because you won't, and you'll end up either eaten by a crocodile
or seeing UFOs.
Yeah. Or running out of water and seeing UFOs. Yeah. So this a Northern Territory MP, in fact, Member of Parliament by the name of Jerry Wood, he told a local paper he had seen UFOs flying around in Darwin's rural area. And he said that there wasn't even a sound or a whisper. There was nothing. You could just see these things moving quickly across the sky. And he said it was like a trail of sparks, similar to when you see a shooting star.
Gee, perhaps it was a shooting star.
Well, no, listen to this, Joe. I quote, "I am also a skeptic, but I saw this thing clear as day." See? He's a skeptic, but it was still there.
Yeah.
So
skeptics, we never get things wrong. We never.
No. And people that call themselves skeptic are always really a skeptic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So maybe Darwin is going to be the next UFO hotspot. So anyone who's coming to the conference in 2010 might like to head for Darwin after Sydney and go and sit in the outback with no water and wait till you start to see things in the sky, and then you can...
Actually, I don't know if anyone, I think a few of us caught Louis Theroux's look at UFOs on Channel 7 the other night. Oh,
yes.
that was an eye-opening experience, if ever we needed another one.
We also have seen, there's been reports this week of ghosts in our Parliament House in New South Wales. Apparently there's been the sounds of a crying baby, that when people go to look for the baby, they can't find it.
That's just a kookaburra. When I first moved to Australia, I had no idea what kookaburras were. I thought they were crying babies.
Did you really?
Honestly, I thought, well, I hear all these crying babies.
My husband thought they were monkeys. He asked me if we had monkeys in Australia when he first said kookaburras.
Perhaps we should see if we can play a kookaburra sound so that our international listeners can... Hang on, can you guys hear... Can you hear that? Can you... Oh, wow! That's a crying baby. I can't find the baby, though. Yes, and on top of this, there have been reports of people feeling someone tapping their shoulder or the back of their neck and then turning around and there's nothing there. And, of course, the traditional... Ow! There's nobody there. Somebody just tapped me on the shoulder, Joe.
Me too.
Oh.
Wasn't me, honestly.
And apparently there's also the typical vision of an old man who just sort of walks past the corridor or something. But it is true that Parliament House is located in an area where there's a hospital around the area, and there used to be a morgue underneath or something, so that would make sense. That's probably why there are ghosties there.
That'd be it,
and there was actually some pretty funny reporting on this by the media, saying that the ghosts are not just of the old parliamentarians who are still hanging around, who just don't want to leave. There are apparently spirits there as well.
Well, I actually heard what did he call himself? Australia's own ghost whisperer.
Oh.
I heard interviewed on the radio yesterday, and Diane, you would have been pleased because he talked about orbs.
Oh,
I love orbs.
I love orbs too.
Yeah.
Why do you like orbs so much, Diane?
On Twitter, when I take pictures, I love orbs in my pictures.
Oh, you get orbs too.
Diane always tweets beautiful orbs.
If our listeners would like to check out Diane's orbs... Please go to Diane _ at Twitter. Look at her orbs. She's gone bright red, and I think I have too.
It's not hard to make it bright red.
Her beautiful orbs, as Joe said. All right, well, we might wrap it up on that note. I don't think we can follow that, can we? Thank you, Joe Benamu.
Thank you,
for
Rachel.
talking to us about Diane's orbs.
Anytime.
Diane, thank you for joining us on the Think Tank. No, we won't be there.
Please, members and guests. The next round is
departing 5 minutes, servicing the Ashfield, Croydon, Burwood, Croydon Park, Campsie, Canterbury areas. Courtesy bus will depart in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yay, wow.
And next time you hear us, listeners, we'll be back to a normal show with our regular members, including Richard Saunders, I nearly forgot. And hopefully we'll have Dave the Happy Singer and maybe Iran Segev. And Joe, you'll be back, won't you?
I'll be back.
And Diane, you'll be here?
Probably.
Excellent. Cheers.
Well, thanks for joining me for the Skeptic Zone. Next week we'll have our full show back with Dr. Reggie Reports A Grain of Salt with Iran Segev and our regular think tank. And don't forget, come and see us at DragonCon in Atlanta. Come and find us, we'll be there at the Skeptic Track. Until then, it's goodbye from Richard Saunders.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone.